Hey, everybody. It's Tuesday. It is Tip Tuesday. Woohoo! So for those of you who don't know, I'm Nikita Brown. I am the nurse practitioner who comes to you on Tuesday with ways to get and stay healthy. If you're watching this on replay, make sure you put hashtag replay so that I can see who is watching this broadcast. I get super excited when it comes to Tuesdays because I have an opportunity to share some health tips with you all. Hopefully you'll share them with your family and friends on your news feeds. And that's how we learn and grow together. So I can't be with you very long today. As you are well aware, there's a lot of stuff going on. Virus type talk. People are still sick with flu. But in my obligation to you to have our Tip Tuesday, I still wanted to follow through on our commitment. So last week we talked about sugar. So if you didn't watch the broadcast from last week, you should. We talked about sugar on last week and we had a very interesting conversation. So this week we're talking about carbs. They're cousins. Let's talk about carbs. If you are just hopping in, it is Tip Tuesday. We're going to shoot through these tips really quickly. Is it true that we need carbohydrates? In the comments, is it true that we need carbohydrates? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you're hopping in, we're talking about carbohydrates this week. Last week we talked about sugars. I like to have this interactive, so make sure you are putting in the comments your thoughts and answering these questions. Is it true that we need carbohydrates? What do you think? Absolutely, it is true. It is absolutely true that we need carbohydrates. But anything in moderation, right? And y'all know how we do. Healthcare providers tell you, yeah, you can have a little bit of this in moderation, but you take a little bit and go a long way. So again, if you're hopping in, is it true that we need carbohydrates? We're talking about carbohydrates this week. Last week we talked about sugar. And so how you all take a little bit and go a long way, hey, is that we'll tell you wine is good for your heart. 1 glass of wine for a woman, 2 glasses of wine for men, and it goes from that to the extreme, right? I don't have to tell you all how much to put in your wine glasses or what an actual wine glass is. That's another topic for another conversation. But that's just an example of wine, how you take a little and go a long way with it. The same thing with chocolate. Chocolate in moderation can be good for you, but how much chocolate are you eating, right? And coffee. I am a coffee lover. But we start adding creamers and flavors and all types of things to our coffee that make it no longer as beneficial for us as it could be. So the answer to this question is absolutely yes. So you're probably thinking, well, what are carbohydrates? You hear people talking about carbs. But what really are carbohydrates? Do you know? Yes in the comments if you know. No if not. If you don't, that's even better because that's what we're here for. So what are carbohydrates? Where there's sugars, there's starches, and there's fibers that are found in our fruit, in our grains, and even in milk. Also in some vegetables. So I bet you didn't know carbohydrates are the starches and the sugar and the fiber that you get in your fruit, your grains, your vegetables, and your milk. Hey, Brenda. So carbohydrates are the main source of your body's energy. So yes, you do need them because we all need energy, right? We all need energy. So carbohydrates, they're one of 3 macronutrients. You got protein, you got fat as the other 2, and then carbohydrates. So they are essential for your body to function. You have to have carbohydrates, and yes, you do need a lot of them. All the macronutrients you get from foods that you eat. You get them from food that you eat. So your body doesn't make them. Your body doesn't make any of them. So we have to eat our carbohydrates. We have to eat them. So why do we need carbohydrates? This should be pretty simple. I just told you. Why do we need carbohydrates? Why is it that when you say I need a snack, you feel like you need something that's carb loaded? Why do we need carbohydrates? If you're just hopping on, I'm Nikita. We're doing Tip Tuesday. Every Tuesday we get tips on how to let you get and stay healthy. We're talking about carbohydrates this week. Make sure you share this broadcast out because somebody somewhere doesn't know what a carbohydrate is. They hear people talking about low carb diets, don't eat carb this and don't eat carb that. But I'm here to let you know you need carbohydrates. but everything in moderation, right? So, why do we need carbohydrates? We need them to fuel our central nervous system and for energy, for our working muscles. So we all have muscles, right? We all have a nervous system. So you need some carbohydrates. But eating too many carbohydrates can prevent protein from being used as an energy source, and it can also decrease your fat metabolism. So we all want to decrease fat metabolism, right? We want to increase our fat metabolism, So if you eat too many carbs, then you're decreasing your fat metabolism, which means you're holding on to it. And you're also preventing protein from being used as your body's energy source. And your brain. So your brain needs carbs to function. So a lot of times when you get ready to get something to help give you a boost, a pick-me-up, what do you pull? You pull something sweet. Oh, I need something sweet. Oh, I need to get a soda. I need to get a Pepsi Cola, as they call it. I need to get some candy. You typically pull from something sweet. That's no coincidence, because the carbohydrates in that do give you a quick pick-me-up. Hey, Ty. So there's no coincidence in that. So let's talk about sugars and starches. This is going to be a quick biology type session for you, but it might help let you know why your carbs are actually good for you. And we talked about sugar last week, so if you didn't see that broadcast, you should. If you have too many carbohydrates in your system, you're going to get an overload of sugar. So I felt like the two of these were just a natural combination. So in your body, carbohydrates break down into smaller units of sugar called glucose and fructose. So I'm teaching the people in my group how to start reading levels. Those OSE at the end, sucralose, fructose, glucose, all those mean sugar. They may be hidden just because they don't want to come out and say sugar, but that's what they are. So you swallow these carbohydrates, they go into your stomach, and then they go into your small intestines, and then they go to your liver. Remember, we eat the carbohydrates. Our body doesn't make them, so that's why we have to eat the carbohydrates. So it goes through this process, our mouth, our stomach, our small intestines, and then our liver. And then the liver converts all of the sugars to glucose, and that goes to your bloodstream. Get it? Glucose meter, glucose tolerance test for those who've ever been pregnant and had to take one. That's what they're checking. So if your glucose is not immediately used for your body, if you don't need that glucose right then for your energy, then what happens to it? It gets stored. You only need about 2,000 calories a day. And so if you consume excessively over that, guess what? Your body's going to store it. And how is it going to store it? It's going to store it as fat. And we just said that when you have an increase in carbohydrates, it decreases the metabolism of fat. So many of you wonder, why can't I lose weight? Well, I don't eat a whole lot. Well, what are you eating? Because if you are eating foods that are high in carbohydrates, and we're going to talk really quickly about simple and complex carbohydrates, then that's why. Your carbohydrates is negating your fat metabolism. And so you can't lose weight because you're eating too many foods that are high in carbs. And so if your glucose is not immediately consumed, meaning you don't need it right then for your body, then it gets stored, and it gets stored as fat. And once all these cells are consumed, that fat just keeps building. It keeps building. It keeps building. And let me tell you, it's much harder to take the fat away than it is to, it's easier to gain the fat than it is to take the fat away. So if you don't have enough carbs in your body, which is why we do need some carbs, then your body starts using your protein for its fuel. So this is problematic because we want our proteins to keep our muscles strong. So you have to have the right mix of carbohydrates and muscle. So that can be super, super tricky. So for those of you who've been trying, you can't figure it out, that's where a dietitian or a healthcare professional comes in. So when you use protein instead of carbs for fuel, it puts the stress on your kidneys. So this is why I tell people to be careful with protein shakes. Because people will supplement with protein shakes, but guess what? They're still eating lots of carbs. They go to the break room and they eat pizza. And they eat donuts. and they still eat all this stuff. And then they take a protein shake. And then they work their kidneys to death. So if you don't know what you're doing, you need to ask somebody, because there is a proper alignment of protein, of fat, and carbohydrates in your body. And many of you, just quite simply, you're eating too many carbohydrates. I see a bunch of you tuning in. Hello, hello, hello. I'm Nikidra. This is Tip Tuesday. Hopefully you all are getting something that's going to help you decrease the carbohydrates that you're eating. If you have a goal of weight loss, you need to convert that fat to muscle. You need to get rid of so many carbohydrates, and there's a way you can do that. So let's talk quickly about simple carbohydrates. Who knows what a simple carbohydrate is? Put in the comments examples of simple carbohydrates, because do we want simple or complex? Think about that. You want a simple carbohydrate or you want a complex carbohydrate? We've already talked, if you're just joining me, we talked about how excess carbohydrates gets metabolized out. It goes to your liver. Your liver has to store it in some fat cells if there's nowhere to place it. You do need some carbs, but you don't need as many as you're eating. You only need about 2,000 calories per day, and the carbohydrates associated with that. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to lessen your calories, increase your exercise. That's the formula. But if you tried this and it's not working, this is where a dietitian comes into play. A lot of people say, oh, dietitian can't tell me anything that I don't know. Yes, they can. All right, what are simple carbohydrates? These are digested and absorbed quickly. They contain 1 or 2 sugars. Fructose, that's what's in your fruit and your milk. I bet you didn't know it. Your milk, loaded with carbohydrates, especially whole milk, loaded with carbohydrates. So 2 sugars are found in table sugar, dairies, and some vegetables. So I didn't see an example of simple carbohydrates unless I am fruit coming in. Yes. So fruit are some simple carbohydrates. Others are soda, syrup, candy. Pretty much they're all processed. So I typically tell people, if you have to choose from fruit or candy, I want you to pull from your fruit, right? So I think of it as simple carbohydrates, or carbohydrates that are processed. They don't have any vitamins, they don't have any nutrients, any minerals, no fiber. They're just junk. Plain and simple junk. Y'all know what junk is. It's just junk. That's what your simple carbohydrates are going to do for you. They're just going to junk up your body with extra fat. They're not giving you any nutritional value. Yes, they do help to get you a jump start for that second, because we know carbohydrates gets our brain working. It helps to get our energy stores up. Hey, Brittany. But for the long haul, those carbohydrates are really good, just going to leave you with more fat. What you want are complex carbohydrates. So you want carbohydrates that have 3 or more sugars. 3 or more sugars. Those are starchy foods we consider. So people will say, oh, I don't eat that because it's starchy. Well, exactly what is it? And let's examine the level of starch, because your starchy foods are going to be found more in vegetables, but they're complex. So I'd rather you have a complex carbohydrate than a simple carbohydrate that's candy. That's a piece of cake. So what are some complex carbohydrates? Let me see. Give me some examples of complex carbohydrates. Can't stay with y'all long. Complex carbohydrates: beans, peas, potatoes, carrots, whole grain bread. Let me say this about bread. Sweet potatoes. Yes, Brittany. Y'all not eating whole grain bread. You're just not. You're eating honey, wheat, white wheat. That's not what you need. You need whole grain bread. So when you say you're eating wheat bread, you're really not. That's actually a simple carbohydrate. Again, reading labels, knowing what's included, makes it essential for you to eat the things that you think that you're eating, right? So all carbohydrates serve as a source of energy. I don't want you to misunderstand. All carbohydrates do serve as a source of energy, and we need carbohydrates. I'm not telling you to go no carb. Is low carb some beneficial? Absolutely, because many of you, you're eating too many carbs. When was the last time you had candy? When was the last time you had pizza? When was the last time you had cake? Oh, and don't let me mention the juice. 100% real juice? Right. I don't think so. Because if it were, you wouldn't be having such a hard time getting rid of the extra fat, adipose tissue. We talked about where that fat generally is stored last week. And where is it stored? It's stored in your gut, in your stomach, that muffin top. That's carbohydrates. I hate to be to exaggerate so much, but this is the only way you can get the clear picture, because you all try to do better. But when you try to do better, you're not doing better with the right foods and the right diets. So fad diets, they typically eliminate some things, but we know you have to have the right combination of all things. You have to have the right combination of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in order for you to be able to see some substantial and long-lasting weight loss. So no fad diet is going to be substantial. You can't keep up with that forever because your body needs a combination of all things. So I think that's my time, y'all. I got to get going. So make sure you share this broadcast out. It's been Tip Tuesday. If you have questions, put them down in the comments. Yes, lots of people don't know the difference between simple and complex carbohydrates, and you do need carbohydrates for fuel. When you all need that pick-me-up, yes, you need a carbohydrate. But be mindful of the carbohydrates that you're eating. And if you take your own food with you, guess what? You don't have to rely on people only having muffins and sweet stuff. Oh, before I get off, kids. So you all love to load kids up with sweet stuff. You give them Pop-Tarts for breakfast. You give them all kind of sugary cereals. What else y'all give them? Stuff with drizzle on top. All this stuff you give kids before they go to school. They are sugary and they are carb loaded. So they go to school and the teacher's like, oh, they can't concentrate. They won't sit down. They won't listen. Why? Because you loaded them up with Pop-Tarts, with sweet stuff, with carbohydrates. And then about 9 or 10 o'clock that morning, what's going to happen? Pew! They're going to come down. They're going to be sleepy. They're going to be tired. And then the teacher's like, oh, they got their head down on their desk. I don't know what's going on with them. And then at lunchtime, they're going to go and get some juice. And they're going to get something out of the vending machine that's sugary. And what's going to happen? Their blood sugar and their energy is going to go back up again. And then at about 1 or 2 o'clock, what's going to happen? They're going to come back down again. By the time they get home, they're tired. They don't have any energy. Stop it. Stop it. If your kid has to eat breakfast at school, make sure you know what type of foods they are serving at school so that the kid can eat a more effective and a better breakfast, have better breakfast choices. Or not, you can just feed your child at school. Better yet, feed your child at school. Some oatmeal, cereals. Not all cereals are sugar loaded. But when you look at the cereals they offer the kids at school, they're Fruit Loops, they're Frosted Flakes. What happened to plain cornflakes? What happened to Raisin Bran? What happened to those things? And so when you start looking at the behavior of kids, the behavior of kids in school isn't due largely to just generational changes, school changes. But let's start looking at what we're feeding our kids. Are we giving them a lot of juice? Are we giving them a lot of junk? A lot of carbohydrates, a lot of sweets that their system has to process? I just told you your body has to process all of those carbohydrates. And so their body has to process food in order for it to respond appropriately. This is probably another subject for another day, but I want y'all to stop it. Stop with the Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Stop with the sugary cereals. And you, stop eating cereal before you go to bed. Stop it. Milk is full of carbohydrates. It's probably bumping you over. That one bowl of cereal at night is bumping you over the top, which is why you don't see any changes on your scale, which is why you can't lose weight. Yes, that one bowl of cereal added with the milk, that's what's doing it. So if it's you, stop it. Stop it. No cereal at night. If you got to buy cereal, it needs to be cereal with whole grains. I typically tell my people you should buy cereals with the heart on it, heart health. Cheerios, plain Cheerios. No honey, no added, plain Cheerios. Got it? Got it. All right, let's do better with the sugar and with the carbohydrates. If you missed the sugar Tip Tuesday from last week, Roll down on my news feed, you'll see it there. Make sure you are sending this out. Make sure you are tagging some moms if you know they are loading their kids up with cereal. Yep, so not all cereal is bad, but what y'all eating at night is bad. What you're eating at night is bad. Just consider what type of cereal you're buying and what it is you're eating at night. And the milk itself has fats and it has cholesterol. Who in here drinks almond milk? Who in here drinks coconut milk? That's not as fat loaded. Have you ever seen how many calories is in almond or coconut milk versus your whole milk? Not a lot of fat. Not a lot of cholesterol. All right, I got to get out of here. I hope this has been helpful. I hope to see you all back on next Tuesday for our next Tip Tuesday. Have a great day. Bye.